Fantastic. We are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, which is about the state of local search in 2022. We have had the customary sort of mild panic behind scenes in the green room, just getting everything ready on the tech front and making sure all our panelists are with us. We have all our panelists, which is a great start. We're just going to do a very quick sound and visual check so that everyone can hear us. Those of you who are posting where you're listening in from on the right-hand side, that's great. That gives us a really good understanding of where everyone is listening in from. So keep doing that. But can you also just give us a thumbs up or a yes, I can hear you, see you, all coming through clear? You should be able to hear it and see me. I'm going to ask Ben, Joy, and Amanda just to say something quickly. And if they don't come through, you don't hear from them, then please shout out.
Well, I'll just say something quickly. How's that?
I don't have anything creative, so this will work.
I'm going to say cheeseburgers because I want one and I'm not able to eat them right now. So
cheeseburgers with bacon.
Surely it's the morning. Surely it's the morning for some of you. You know, we're pushing 5 o'clock. It's definitely burger time here. Right. So listen, we have had a phenomenal response to this webinar. It's actually our first webinar in over a year. So apologies to those who have been waiting on tenterhooks for us to do another webinar. And it is a crack. This one is always a good one to kick the year off. Essentially looking back a little bit at 2021 or the previous year, then looking ahead to the next year, and just seeing what we've learned from the last 12 months, what's going to carry on into the next 12 months. And also what potential, possible, likely, unlikely, out of this world new developments are going to happen in local search over the next 12 months. So I have the pleasure of your company for 90 minutes, and I'm just going to talk you through the agenda and a bit of housekeeping, and then I'll ask our 3 esteemed panelists just to introduce themselves a little bit more for those of you who don't know them very well already. So yeah, obviously the topic is a very broad topic, the state of local search in 2022. This is the agenda. So the webinar is split into 3 parts, equally in sort of 30-minute sections. Firstly, looking back, taking stock of 2021, what are the biggest changes and developments that happened in local search over the last 12 months? Then looking forward, looking at what the state of local search in 2022 holds for us. A little bit of looking back, actually, the vicinity update that took hold in kind of early December, and seeing what that really kind of delivered, and seeing what if that's going to see a continuing trend of those kind of developments around proximity and vicinity in 2022. But then also looking at some of the tactics and strategies that our 3 panelists will be adopting more or adopting less in 2022 to enable their clients to gain more visibility and gain traction and gain customers through local search. And the last 30 minutes is going to be a Q&A. So we'll do essentially kind of classic kind of webinar format for the first sort of 60 minutes, and then we'll have a really long Q&A section for 30 minutes where we'll try and get through as many of your questions as we can do. And I'll tell you in a minute how we'll tackle those and how you can sort of submit your questions. From a housekeeping point of view, the webinar is being recorded. The way that Crowdcast works is the recording is available almost immediately afterwards. So I think it might get emailed to you. I'm not entirely sure. But tomorrow we'll be publishing a quick roundup on the BrightLocal blog in the Bright Ideas section, and we'll be including a link to the recording in there anyway. So if you have to leave early, but you want to kind of recap and catch up on the bits you missed, there will be a recording sent around and also available on the BrightLocal blog tomorrow. If you want to get your questions answered, there is a Ask Question section sort of right in the middle of your screen at the bottom. You just go in there, you can post a question. You'll also see all the other questions that any other attendees have asked as well, and you can upvote the questions you really like. When we come around to the Q&A section, we will simply pick the most popular questions off the top. Those are the ones with the most upvotes, and we'll try and get through as many of those as we can do in the 30 minutes that we've got. We'll also be running a couple of polls during the webinar. Those polls are designed to, it's a bit of a sort of litmus test for how people are feeling about both last year, but also in the year ahead. And once you've got the results, we will be sharing them at the kind of the sort of appropriate points throughout the webinar. So the chance for everyone to kind of interact, a chance for us to understand how people are feeling about the last 12 months, and also what their kind of optimism is for the 12 months ahead. So there we have it. Pretty quick run through. And now I just want to invite each of our incredible panelists who've been incredibly generous with their time and also their knowledge in kind of joining us today. The first one is Amanda Jordan from Ricky True. This is actually Amanda's first time on a kind of BrightLocal webinar, which I find incredibly surprising because she's a wonderful, wonderful marketeer, and she's done an academy recording for us. She's also participated in the podcast, and we've been completely remiss about not getting her on a webinar. So Amanda, over to you to say a few things about your experience.
Yeah, so I first got into local SEO in the legal space. I worked with lots and lots of legal clients across the US, including in very highly competitive cities like Charlotte, Atlanta, and New York City. From there, I went and worked at a technical SEO agency where I worked with enterprise level local clients such as credit unions, banks, home senior care franchises, and things like that as well. So spent a lot of time in local. It's been a lot of fun, and I think I learned a lot of new and different and interesting ways to look at different issues for SMBs as well as enterprise level clients from being able to be in both of those spaces.
Okay, fantastic, Manda. That's an excellent overview, and you're incredibly well qualified to answer all the kind of questions today. Thank you for joining us. Next, we have Joy Hawkins, who probably doesn't need any introduction to anyone, but go ahead, Joy. Please introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm the owner of Sterling Sky. We are a local search agency, employees both in the US and Canada. We also own Local U, which does events usually 3 times a year for people wanting to learn more about local search. So they're kind of catered toward marketers and in-house teams. And then we also have the Local Search Forum, which is a free online forum. If you're looking to really dig in and learn more about local search, we go there to talk about it.
Excellent, Joy, and welcome back. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to join us today. And by no means last or least, it is Ben Fisher from Steady Demand.
Thanks, Miles, for having me. My name is Ben Fisher. I'm a Google My Business Diamond product expert. And if you don't know me, basically I've been around, I'm a dinosaur. I've been around since 1994. I'm the founder of Steady Demand. We work with enterprises, franchises, and also small businesses to help them with their local SEO as well as their local service ads. We're very well known for doing reinstatements. I think we did probably over 2,000 individual reinstatements, something like that last year. And we do a couple hundred a month. And but yeah, no, I mean, we just love local and love GMB, or well, Google Business Profiles, actually.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben. And I also like to give a plug for our latest local consumer review study, which came out today, which Ben very helpfully contributed to normally do in lots of kind of comments and kind of commentary alongside of that. So if you haven't seen the latest version of the local consumer review survey, please jump over to the research section of Bright Ideas on BrightLocal and check it out. And Ben, thank you again. You have been a regular member on these webinars. There's also a regular contributor to many of the things that we do. We really do appreciate that.
We love you.
It's wonderful to be back doing a webinar. It's fantastic to have the three of you with us today, and we're going to cover some excellent ground that's going to be enormously beneficial for our audience. So what is that ground? The first part is taking stock of 2021, so looking back and seeing what we learned, and really kind of 3 questions I'm going to put to the three of you. What was the single biggest learning you took away about local search in 2021? What were the 3 biggest changes or developments that caused you to change your tactics and strategies? And what was the most unexpected development in local search or from running an agency as a whole in 2021? So that's what we're going to cover for the next, let's say, sort of 25 minutes, as we've kind of already used up a few of those minutes. So I'm just going to stop sharing, get your beautiful faces back on screen. And I'm going to come to you first, Amanda. What was the biggest learning you took away from 2021 in terms of local search?
Don't sleep on updating your Google business profiles. I think that's the biggest thing, just because there's been so many categories added, so many features added, that it's very easy for clients, especially if they're in industries where it's traditionally not a huge local space, but there are so many new features coming out on a regular basis that were important to add to your listing. Using all of those features as well. So even the things that aren't necessarily directly impacting your ranking, making sure you have those products and services completed, making sure that you have good quality photos, making sure that you respond to your reviews, making sure that you use the Q&A section, and just seeing Google Business Profiles as a more holistic approach to finding new customers, not just a, hey, let's make sure we rank for our top keywords, but let's make sure that we're encouraging people to engage with us in every possible way we can in our Google Business Profile.
Fascinating. And has that really changed that much from, had I asked you the same question, at the start of 2021, would you give me a similar answer, or does something significant happen last year that it's made you have this?
Probably would be. I think just the climate has changed. Local has become a bigger part of like the SEO conversation, considering that a lot of people are ordering things from home now. They're depending on local business to be able to provide curbside or delivery and things like that. So I think I would say this is kind of what my experience is since the beginning of 2021 to the beginning of 2022, is just seeing that ramp up more and more and seeing more features in local that didn't quite exist before, or at least weren't as well thought out and planned out. And for example, reviews have gone from like, of course you need to have reviews, of course it's better to have keywords in the review content that the reviewer left, but just seeing that come into play in different areas of the Google business profile, seeing that Google is pulling in data from third-party sites and putting it in your Google business profile section. It just made it seem like, oh, okay, well, it's not that I just have to set this up. It's not as much as a one and done as it used to be. Setting up the Google business profile is something that you need to continue to work on and continue to check, because Google is pulling in data from other sources. I've seen clients where they pulled in contact information from a third-party site that, for what reason, cannot tell you why it's there. It's not on their website at all or anywhere, but they pulled in email addresses and contact information from a third-party site and added it to the Google business profile. So just being aware of what may be happening and doing regular checks and figuring out, how do I account for these things that are happening and changing, and sometimes may not even be correct information, right? If it's coming from a third-party site, that site may not have been updated in years. If it's not extremely relevant and important, and knowing how to mitigate risks from new features being tested as well.
Okay. Wow, thank you. You've literally blown my mind within the first 3 minutes, just about the amount, the intensity of which you need to be monitoring your Google My Business profile now, or your Google Business profile. It was traditionally quite often considered, once you've got the main optimization done, you can kind of move on, and it remains a relatively kind of static piece. Joy, I'm going to come to you, I guess, from just following on from what Amanda said, in terms from an agency's perspective. Is that now need to have more kind of continual, constant monitoring, managing, finessing, and upgrading of your Google business profile? Is that music to an agency owner's ears, i.e., you've now got this much more repeatable, consistent need to update on behalf of your customers? Or is that a bit of a drag because actually you'd like to move on and do other more sophisticated pieces of work, or kind of deepen your tactics and strategies in other areas?
I'd say it's probably positive for most agencies, for sure. As long as those tasks are bringing value. I know sometimes we like to prioritize tasks. Certain things are more like higher priority than others. And sometimes when Google releases a new shiny object, we think it's going to be like really substantial, and then it's not. So I think that's one of those things where we try to keep that in mind. Like how much of an impact is this going to make to the actual business?
Fantastic. That is such a good start. Joy, I might just stick with you. What was your sort of single biggest learning from last year?
Yeah, so very, very different, I guess, topic than what Amanda did. But I would say I made a decision last year for my agency to not take on clients in every industry. So like before this, we were trying to really kind of keep our client base pretty diverse as far as like what types of businesses and stuff. And what I found was, when I'm analyzing strategies, which is my favorite part of my job, like figuring out what's working, what's actually driving the leads, why are those leads coming, what made that page rank on Google, like that kind of stuff. I found it's like way easier to analyze those trends and those strategies when you have lots of businesses to look at in the same vertical. Because some verticals in local search, like we talk about local search, like it's this big umbrella, but like when you niche down into different industries, like the things you need to know about each industry vary so much. Like, for example, if you work with car dealers, the rules around listings and what listings you can have and like how those listings work, and if you even want those listings, like, I mean, it's so different than like if you work with healthcare, for example, or lawyers. So I think that was like something where, after making that decision, I'm happier every day, like that I made the decision. And doing that, I think it's just going to really kind of hit home that you just can't be an expert at everything, right? So it's kind of humbling, but also you got to keep that in the front of your head.
Kevin, by the way, in the chat has asked if you could send all the leads that you're rejecting over to him. He'd be very appreciative of that. Don't blame you, Kevin. No, if you don't ask, you don't get. So, really interesting. And how much do you think? Because obviously, you've been in local such a long time. You've run your agency for many years. Do you think this is something that you wish you'd done before? Or do you think this is something that you have to maybe arrive at once you've established yourself sort of in the industry? Or do you wish you could go back and tell yourself 6 years ago, focus hard on, X number of industries?
I'm not sure I'd say that. Like, I think that the timing of it was good. Like, it was the right point because we're starting to get to that next level of agency with, I've heard lots of agency owners tell me once you hit past 20 employees, it's different. Like, you're going to notice different things. So that's definitely true. But no, I wouldn't say like I wish I'd learned it early on. I am still very adamant that I don't want to just be like a single niche. Like, I know that's very common in this space. There are a lot of dental only, legal only, automotive only. Like, we don't want to be that niche, because I think that like there are things you can learn from other industries as well. So there's some crossover there where it's helpful to actually know how things work in another industry and not just a single one. So I think it's like a balance. I feel like we found like a good middle ground there between those two extremes of taking everything and taking only like one thing.
Do you know, could you say how many sort of categories you serve?
I don't even know. I think like the high list is like 15, but definitely like the verticals we get the most in are like realtors, lawyers, home services, and actually marketing agencies. We get a lot of marketing agencies having us do audits and stuff for their clients.
And do you have specific people who go deep in those particular industries? Like, do you have a go-to team for real estate, a go-to team for dental?
We're starting to, yes. So that's another thing that I'm noticing as the company grows and we get more people in, we are starting to see that like, yeah, we have certain people that are kind of our dental experts and certain people that are our real estate experts and whatnot, which is also great. Like, it's really great to have people that really know a certain vertical very well.
And what are the practical benefits for you running an agency? What does that give you in terms of more ROI, more efficiency?
Yeah, our big thing is client retention. Like, employee retention comes first, but client retention is right next. And I would say that keeping clients, you're not going to do that unless you can deliver killer results. So I think this just better enables us to do that by seeing a lot of trends, seeing what works, what doesn't, being able to like accurately come up with those strategies. It's way easier for me to do that and make sure that like what we're doing is actually changing how many leads that business is getting. And it's not just like some best practice or it looks pretty. There's a lot of those.
Yeah. Is there a downside to that in terms of, for example, competition amongst your kind of customer group and getting testimonials from sort of practices that don't want other practices to be using you because you're their kind of gold dust?
Yeah, I remember actually, it was funny. So one of our agency clients once, I sent them a review request to leave us a review, and it was like through Gather Up, but it was like an internal review, so not one that's going on Google. And they put 1 star in there, and they put, "I'm putting this because I don't want any of my competition to know that we use you or that you're any good." And I laughed, and then I like messaged him. I was like giving him a really hard time about it. I was like, "Seriously, like this is going to actually change our rating?" He's like, "Come on, Joy, it was funny." But normally we don't, so I would say that's not super common. But it does happen a little bit. I'd say the downside to having multiple industries that you work with is, a lot of people want to scale. Like, I hear that word a lot. I hate that word. So anyone that works for me knows that that's like a banned word internally. Like, I don't like the word scale. I have no desire to try and like scale the agency. I want to grow the agency, but we are still very big on like what you're paying for is people and their expertise and what they know, and that's going to result in more business for you. I'm not trying to automate those types of things.
Sure. Wonderful, Joy. That's great insight. Thank you for sharing that. Ben, how about you? What's your biggest takeaway from last year?
Oh my God, I've got so many things to say though about what Amanda and Joy have just said.
Go for it. You have any questions as well?
No, I mean, but it was really, it's all brilliant, right? I think personally, and I think that everybody that's listening should have totally listened to what Joy and Amanda have said here. A couple things that I'll say is this: is like, so we started doing GMP management as a package as a service, right, for agencies and for companies, basically, about 5 years ago. And we, I think we were one of the first actually that started doing it like that as a company. And that's all we did when we first started. And what we have found out is that aspects of GMB have to be revisited on sometimes a weekly basis, but at the very minimum a monthly basis. And the reason is that, you know, they might introduce a new feature, like for instance, opening dates. That comes to mind. Opening dates are rolled out and they were not actually utilized in search for months. So, but if you had gone in and you had filled in that data for your clients or as your, you know, then when it came about, you'd be ready for it, right? And you wouldn't be dealing with people saying, well, I haven't been in business less than 3 years. Oh, well, you didn't fill out your opening date, right? So I say it's basically, it's every aspect of GMB is not important until it is. So you might as well just go ahead and take care of it. And because it is important, some of our customers, 90% of their revenue comes directly from Google Business Profiles. So my spam fighting weapons have disappeared. No, I still have them. So, and I also agree in the fact that you can't be an expert in everything. And what we did as an agency is when we first started, we have a scalable agency, by the way, Joy, not automated. No, but seriously. So what we did is we decided to absolutely niche down. When we started, it was all about Google My Business, and that was it, now Google Business Profile. And since then, especially I would say in the last year, we absolutely expanded and we developed things called pods, basically. And a pod is defined as 1 to 2 people who are very specifically good at one certain thing. They're extremely good at it. They have other skill sets which complement the client, but really that's what they do. It's like our local service ads. Crystal, shit, all she does for us is local service ads and some other stuff too. And then we have Stefan. He does all of our audits for us. So we niche down, but we niche down into people, and we found that to be extremely effective versus, say, you know, using the traditional agency model, which is where you have, you know, say one account manager or one person who's doing everything for that client. And we found it to just be extremely effective, and it allows our agency to grow. And, you know, and we don't have to be very picky about, you know, certain categories or things like that. Anyway, I'd say the biggest learning that we had in last year is that you really need to be able to pivot fast in local SEO. The rebranding was a pivot, right? You know, it wasn't a huge pivot, that's for sure. But, you know, Google going from Google My Business to Google Business Profiles, you know, we've got to do some things there, make some changes. The other type of pivots that we had to make last year was about spam. And I know we all talk about this in the local ranking factor survey. A majority of the peers and colleagues in this industry have said that, okay, spam sucks. It's not working. You know, I know, Joy, you have a lot of thoughts on this too. But, you know, but for us, we were able to pivot and go from basically a 10% success rate to now a 60% success rate by doing a lot of analysis, a lot of experimenting, you know, and also getting rid of a couple categories. You know, for instance, lawyers. We don't do any work for lawyers anymore when it comes to spam. Sorry. But, you know, but we found out that in other industries, we can have a ton of success. So, but it was crappy there for a couple months. We were like, what's going on? Google's changed some stuff, which they did. They absolutely changed a lot of things. So yeah, so I encourage you as an agency or as a business, just be ready to pivot at any time. Google can take the rug right out from under you, as we're going to be talking about later about the vicinity update. Vicinity update has been devastating for some businesses. And there's kind of no rhyme or reason behind it. But as an agency, again, you got to pivot and figure it out.
Okay, brilliant, Ben. Thank you. Joy, I'm going to come to you. I guess next question down on my list is, if you could distill it down, what were the 3 biggest changes or developments that either you made in response to something that went on, or that you made in terms of your tactics and approach to kind of delivering local search services? Either it could have been things that you felt this is for us, is what we're going to do, and it's made an impact, or actually in response to, as Ben said, pivoting to changes in the kind of wider local SEO environment?
Yeah, so my top three were photos, LSA, and spam. So I'll kind of nail them out one by one here. So photos, I did a lot of presentations last year. Like if anybody heard me speak at any virtual events, since they were all virtual, I talked a lot about photos and just how much Google is showing photos now. Like on mobile search results, they show them. You've got them in ads now with image extensions. You have LSA that's showing images. So images are becoming more and more of a thing that businesses need to pay attention to. And we did a whole bunch of studies that I've mostly, I think, posted on our blog now. So on the Sterling Sky blog, showing just like photos can impact your ranking, photos can impact your conversions. So we definitely have increased the importance of photos, like as an agency, for tactics that we use. For LSA, that was a thing that didn't exist a couple of years ago for many verticals. So when that expanded to legal and real estate and some of the verticals that we work a lot in, that was something that, again, you had to, like Ben say, pivot, because we found that their Google Ads accounts would start tanking in performance if LSA launched in their verticals. So knowing where to pull back and where to push your marketing dollars and doing it quickly so that you don't waste a whole bunch of money is really important. And also having, like, we very similar to like what Ben was saying, we have the same deal at my agency where we have like specialists. So, Matt Cassidy is our LSA specialist, and he's kind of like always looking at our LSA account. So I totally agree that it's great to have certain individuals focused on that type of thing and learning the ins and outs and all the tricks and all that stuff. And then spam, as Ben kind of alluded to, I have a lot to say on this topic. So we did a study that I haven't released yet. So it's actually the topic of my talk at the next Local U. And we looked at a little over 5,000 listings over the last 3 years, listings that basically were competitors of our clients. So like when we're looking for spam, we're looking for, listings that violate Google's guidelines. So we just check every single one and we say, this one's legit, this one's not legit, et cetera. So we had about 5,000 that we looked at. And we definitely noticed like a lot of trends, as Ben kind of alluded to, like when it comes to approaching spam, your results will vary a lot based on the industry. So kind of not to give away my whole talk or like points, but like what I was kind of finding is that some industries, spam fighting is still very effective and it works. Some industries where there's such a high volume of lead gen, like the garage door industry, it's actually harder to get results because the moment you knock down a listing, a new one's already there. So it's like, did you actually accomplish anything? Are you actually going to get more phone calls? Like these are the questions that I think people have to ask. So the difference between the different industries, how much spam there is, how effective it is, what it actually does to the business's rankings and call volume. I think that's something that really has to be analyzed industry by industry and also market by market, because there are definitely patterns for certain geos.
Okay. I'm just going to unpack a little bit of that so that I understand and the listeners understand. So LSA, I think it's quite clear. When LSA opens up in a category, it has a massive impact upon the traffic and the clicks you're getting through paid ads and probably through kind of other channels. So you've got to pivot quickly to take advantage of that and allocate kind of budget to it. With the photos and the greater visibility, I understand obviously there's greater visibility. What are you actually doing to capitalize upon? What are you making use of in and around photos? Is it just more photos, or what's your strategy with customers?
Yeah, I'd say the whopping majority of sites that we look at, they're either using stock photos or no photos. So that's pretty common with small businesses. So getting, like, I had a real estate agent recently. We work with a lot of realtors, and I said, can you get one of your guys to go out to the main communities that you work in and take photos of like this city and that city and stuff. So we have unique imagery that we can use for your website. So kind of prompting businesses to get us photos. A lot of them have them. They just don't use them. Like they use them on Facebook, but they don't put them on their site. So it's a lot of that, and just making sure that the photos are the right size, right placement, which I kind of talk about in my the blog that I did on getting mobile photos and how to do that. Like it's basically, it's not rocket science. It's where the photo is on your page. So you need it to be higher up, and the size of it. So if it's like a square photo, it's more likely to get chosen than if it's like a big rectangle.
Here's some feedback. Anyone else hearing that feedback?
I'm hearing it a bit as well. There we go. It's gone. Miles, you're muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're muted.
Not sure where it's coming from. Strange. Let's move on. We're actually always butt up against the kind of time constraints. Let's move on. Amanda, same question to you. What are the 3 big things that you adapted or pivoted or changed in the last year, and why?
Yeah. So focusing more on technical aspects of local SEO. I think it's very easy for local SEOs to get too bogged down in the content and Google business profile sections and miss a lot of things that are crucial for the website. Internal linking being one of them. I see a lot of sites that have terrible internal linking, not linking to location pages, not linking to service pages, linking more so to their blog pages because they have their template is set up to use related content and it's all going to blogs. Things like that. Seeing clients with their robots text file de-indexing their service pages, not being aware that that's something that you should look at, and just not understanding that that there are things on your website that is impacting your website, your ability to rank across the board, and those things getting missed a lot. Another thing is data storytelling, because not only do I want to believe in what I'm recommending to a client, I want them to deeply believe in it too, and making sure that I have the data that backs up what I'm saying and I can present it in a way that not only another SEO can understand my recommendations, but the client has full confidence in what we're doing, why we're doing it, and they can see the train of thought, like the mind map as to how we got there. And that's one of the things that I've become really passionate and interested in. And then my last one is to borrow from Taco Bell, thinking outside of the bun. So when I have clients that have issues with spam and they're in these industries where it's just futile to fight it, right? If the top 20 listings for IT consulting in Los Angeles has spam in it, even if you reported all of them and half of them were removed, they're likely going to either change their name again, because Google does not stop them from just editing their name again once it's been changed once, or they're going to, or the ones who did not get taken down will continue to do it. And there's industries where it's just futile. So just thinking outside of the box and think of ways to improve their rankings in different markets where that is not an issue. Instead of focusing on that one key city, there's all these other cities nearby that have high populations, lower difficulty to rank, and does not have the spam problem as much. So finding opportunities to rank in other cities that are nearby that you do service, and that you can rank for if you just updated your site with content. There are definitely tactics you can use to find out if it's possible for your map listing to rank, even if you're not in that city. And part of it is just understanding competition in that city. If there is no one else directly in that city ranking for those keywords, and it pulls up a local pack and you can see where the cities are for your competitors, none of them are in the actual city. That means that you can rank in that city as well without actually being in that city. So just finding unique opportunities to rank for cities that you're not directly in, but close enough to try to get around some of these spam issues that unfortunately have been addressed a little bit in the vicinity update, but they're not going away, not completely, and not in a satisfactory way for a lot of industries where it's just going to keep happening, like legal and other industries that depend on especially lead gen. It seems like those are the ones that are hit hardest by those issues. And something I wanted to mention about images, Google has Vision AI, which you can put your images in and see what keywords Google associates with that image. And that is a great way to determine what images should be on your site and in your Google business profile. Because if you do a search for something like PlayStation 5 controllers, Google will pull up in the local pack any controller photos that anyone, like the business owner or a customer, has uploaded in their review. And that will be the image that they serve you in the local pack. And if you search for something else like console instead, you will get the console instead. So like it can read and understand what's in these images, and tools like Vision AI can help you understand what Google is picking up from your images. Because a lot of times, especially with stock images, Darren from White Spark gave this example recently, is like all these dentists have pictures of a smiling family, but that doesn't tell Google anything about your service. So you just see a smiling family. That doesn't really give them any information that's useful from a ranking perspective. So adding that in, putting those pictures in a place where you can figure out, hey, this is what Google thinks of that picture and how it relates to what you're trying to serve, is very beneficial.
Fascinating, thank you. And I'm sure we'll come on to talk more about the sort of the ranking outside your area, and we come and talk about the kind of vicinity update in a minute. Ben, I'm going to come to you. So I'd love to. I've got 1,000 questions, but I think for the sake of time, Ben, I'm going to come to you. What's your three big changes from last year? 3 takeaways or strategy changes?
Well, the biggest thing is that we started geotagging every single thing we ever could and inserting as much EXIF data as possible. I'm joking, everybody, just in case you could not tell. No, I mean, you know, everything that Amanda and Joy have said, I mean, is basically something I'm just going to parrot back, to be honest with you. Okay. Local service ads, we found that to be important too. So we launched that as a new division in our company, and it's been extremely successful. Images, you know, as far as images go, we've focused on images for quite a while, actually. We developed a program called Local Pix, which allows people to, well, I'd like to say it's a simple solution for a complex problem. And the complex problem is for an agency is getting your customer to actually give you photos, right? And especially photos that they've taken locally. So what we did is we just developed a program that sends them a text message every X amount of days, and they can respond and they take a photo, and it goes ahead and it uploads it to Google Business Profile, your Google Business Profile. You know, I mean, it's nice because it's coming from them locally. You know, I mean, we've checked though. I mean, of course, the what do you call it? The geotagging and all of that is stripped out, but Google knows the location that it's coming from. And so that works really well from that perspective. And I mean, I completely agree. I mean, as far as everything else goes, I mean, there's a semantic inference that's taken with the images these days, and it has been for quite a while. You know, I believe in 2013, Google started OCRing images, and now they've gotten to the point with the Google Vision API where they can absolutely read what's happening in the image. And so this is great from I think a conversion perspective, not necessarily a ranking perspective, just as most things are in Google Business Profiles. Last year, you know, we had also already been, we have a program where we help people open up new locations and do rebranding. So we were kind of ready for the vicinity update. What we found is, well, I'll get into that later, actually, so we can save that. And I think I already talked about spam. So, I mean, really last year, I guess in a nutshell, to answer your question, is the top 3 things that made us change. There really wasn't any. We just kind of stayed the course, really, more than anything else, because most of the things that were happening, we were just already ready for. I guess we were already doing it.
Okay, all right, that's totally fair enough. Thank you to the sort of 3 of you. I think we're about to talk about the vicinity update anyway, which will maybe answer some of the stuff around sort of spam and ranking outside your area. I'm just going to get back to the sort of slide deck, and we're going to sort of move forward to the next section. But also, we've got the results of our first poll to share. So thank you everyone who took the time to kind of participate in that. The question was, is it easier or harder to be successful at local search than it was 12 months ago? And the results are firmly on the side of it being harder or much harder. No one who took part in the poll said that it was going to be easier or much easier to be successful at local search, which does that surprise me? Does that surprise you panelists?
Yeah. I find it actually very surprising. I think that a lot of the things that have happened just in the past year or two have made local search a lot easier. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. No, I think it's continuing to get harder. It was either Dan Liebson or Andrew Shotland. I can't remember. It was years ago at a conference, and they were saying that over the years predicted that Essentially, it'll continue to get more and more challenging to come up with tactics that you can just quickly spin out as an agency. This is where I talk about how I hate the word scale, because that's what I see a lot of times in Facebook groups and stuff, is people are looking for this silver bullet that they can just implement across all of their clients that'll instantly kind of get them ranking. And like, there were times in local search you could do that. Like, I've seen that in my career. Like, and I think that those types of things are becoming less and less impactful as the years go on. So I would agree, like, with the poll results. Like, I think that basically what Andrew said is he's going to see a divide. There's going to be those agencies that have like the churn and burn model, and they're going to have a harder time being successful. And then the agencies that really just have solid strategies will just continue to rise, and there'll be more of a split.
That's really interesting, and I'm sure we might take this idea, this initial, we had sort of 60 participants, maybe break it out to the kind of wider BrightLocal customer group, and see if that trend is kind of continues through them as well. But it certainly looks like life is getting harder, and therefore webinars like this and the tactics that you're sharing with us are more and more important and valuable to those running agencies or running their own kind of their own consultancies. So thank you to the three of you. Now let's look ahead. Let's look at the state of local search in 2022. I want to start us off talking about the vicinity update, what that was. So Joy, I know you've published a fairly big piece, and I believe, if I'm right, you actually kind of coined the term vicinity update. So suitable to kind of come to you. I guess let's talk about what we know about it. What are the updates? What are the implications moving forward? Maybe some stuff about Google's intentions around that, and what does that tell us about the future intentions and the future changes that we might see. Also, then also talk about how does it affect strategies and tactics, and who are the biggest winners and who are the biggest sort of losers in this particular update. So we spend the next 15 minutes just really talking about vicinity and try and tackle this sort of broad set of questions around it. So Joy, if I kind of come back to you first, then what was it all about?
Yeah, so early December, I was actually off. I wasn't working. I was down at my in-laws, and we had a thread on the local search forum where started by an individual who's saying she's noticing some massive shifts, and then more and more people were chiming in. And this is often usually what kind of perks my interests when I see something with an algorithm update. It's like when lots of people are saying the same thing, where they're seeing lots and lots of movement. I basically decided to spend a few hours like looking through and analyzing a whole bunch of our clients, which worked well because I wasn't working at the time. So I was like, hey, I've got time to actually look at this. And we coined the term the vicinity update. It was actually Colin's, my colleague Colin Nielsen, his term. We were like, what can we think about? Something to do with proximity. We need something good. I don't want to do an animal name. So we're like, we need to update. We need to come up with a name. I hate like Google goes with like the local search algorithm update of December 2021. And I'm like, God, that's a mouthful. I don't want to have to say that on webinars. So so Colin came up with the vicinity update. So I have an article about it on the Sterling Sky blog, and then I also wrote one for Search Engine Land. And the biggest kind of thing we saw, it's really, really noticeable in the legal industry, specifically with personal injury lawyers. And I'll kind of explain why. There's a phenomenon that we've been noticing in that industry over the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, where lawyers are, very, how do I put this? They're very competitive in that space. They are very like take over the world, dominate, that type of thing, and will throw anything it takes to make that happen. So a lot of these lawyers started rebranding their firms. So, they went with like BrightLocal, best personal injury lawyer in Los Angeles, et cetera, something like that. Like they actually made that their name, went through the process of, updating all the places you need to update. And what we would see as a result of them doing that is they would like dominate their market. Like they would rank, if you're in LA, all across LA for all kinds of really competitive terms by doing that, which is stupid, but it worked. We'd see it time and time again. Those people, those specific companies, all the ones that we saw that rebranded got slammed with this update. So if they were currently ranking for like car accident lawyer across like a big geo, and you would only see this on grid tracking. So like if you're using BrightLocal and you're not using grid tracking, use grid tracking. Because that's really the only place that you would notice it. Like you might notice it scanning from a single point, but it's very unlikely. So we saw like a big shift of like, you're dominating, it's all green over a wide variety of areas for what I call implicit term. So like plumber, lawyer, personal injury lawyer. So not personal injury lawyer, Los Angeles. That would be what I call an explicit term. So for the implicit terms with no geos in them, there was a vast difference where essentially like you don't rank very far away anymore. So if you were currently ranking over like a 20-mile area, that could have shrunk to like 5 or like less. And we saw that consistently across lots of different verticals. Explicit terms like personal injury lawyer Los Angeles, those remained a little more stable. So we're still seeing lots of people dominate those across a really, really large area. But the implicit terms were really severely impacted.
Okay, thank you very much, George, for taking us up there. So what are the I guess, you know, who's won in this situation? Who's lost out and why?
Yeah,
Ben,
like.
sorry. I might come to Ben. What you've seen, Ben? Who's won? Who's lost, and why?
So I'm seeing a little bit of different things than Joy is seeing. And Joy did an amazing job, I think, with the case study. I really do. You know, I mean, I read it as soon as she put it out, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I was like, okay, that explains one phone call I got this morning. And since, you know, the December 8th, basically, I mean, I've gotten maybe a total of 6-7 phone calls out of our thousands of clients, really talking about and having this kind of issue. So I've seen it a lot less internally. However, you know, what we have seen is that storefronts are affected. Service area businesses don't seem to be affected from this update. Our clients' behavior, you know, we use the grid tracking tool as well, and like Local Falcon, for instance. And basically what we've found out is that, yeah, some people are being affected. Absolutely. It doesn't seem like there's a certain type of category that is being affected. Lawyers, maybe, but it's kind of spotty because, you know, if you go to San Diego, you'll still see that people are doing well. But if you go to LA, you'll see that people are not doing well. So I don't know if it's a correlation as far as like, you know, the size of the metro or not. I really haven't dug that deep into it. But I've seen kind of the opposite with keywords. And so what I've seen there as far as a pattern goes is that, again, in larger metros, it appears like the keywords are not as effective. Like I've got quite a few LA clients who called and they said they've gotten massacred. But on the flip side of that, I've got clients that are in the same category, same metro, who have keywords in their name, or I'm sorry, I don't have keywords in their name, and they got massacred as well. So it's kind of like a 50-50 almost, I would say. So I just don't know if there's correlation with the keyword. That's all. The vicinity update absolutely has affected some people, and our clients, you know, basically are trying to combat this by using a grid tracker to find out where the fall off in their ranking is. And they're considering opening up new locations and going about it the right way in compliance, you know, and actually getting a location, not an employee's home or anything like that. Don't do that, everybody. You know, but just looking at it as a actual business, a business challenge, right? So if there's a fall off, they can open up a small location, rent something temporarily, put a tracking number on it, put some UTM codes on the URLs, and track it and see if they're getting sales in that location. If they are, they're going to go ahead and they're going to pop up a new one. And that's been extremely effective. Just to get back to the keyword thing really quickly, is you know, we had a client who did get hit by the vicinity update very badly. They had 5 locations. They went ahead. We did the exercise of rebranding because when we searched in the area, we found a lot of keyword stuffing competitors. And so, and then once we did the rebranding, literally within 72 hours, they were ranking and crushing their competitors. So I still think a little bit more research needs to be done in that area. And, you know, at the very minimum, experiment, try it. You know, you can always tell your client that we'd like to try something and see if it works. So yeah, that would be my take on that.
When you say rebranding, Ben, what do you mean specifically by that?
That means, like, for instance, you know, going ahead and going from being BrightLocal to being BrightLocal, the best personal injury lawyer in the UK. So, you know, actually adding keywords to your business name and doing a rebranding of your business that way, you know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm seeing it works. So,
but your client, the benefited, you added keywords to their name. Okay, so
yeah, we had a client who was hit by the vicinity update. They did not have keywords in their name whatsoever, And so what we did is we took a look using a grid tracker, and we also used a traditional tracker as well, just to see what was in the area and what basically, was there anybody else hit by the vicinity update? What was different? And we found out that a majority of the people in the top 10, did have keywords in their name. So, but again, I must stress is this verifies, but it varies per market. So it's not consistent.
Yeah. Amanda, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I've been seeing that it's not consistent too. Just while listening, I did a search for IT consulting San Diego versus IT consulting Los Angeles. IT consulting San Diego, not much spam. Los Angeles, a ton of spam. So there's not a clear correlation between where the keyword in the name has hit businesses who are doing it very hard and where it hasn't. Because I would think Los Angeles would be a prime example of something that would be impacted by this update. But almost everyone has keywords added, lots of keywords added to their business name, and not in a way that's sneaky at all. Like one of them is in Japanese. One of them includes like a divider line in the business name. So it's clearly not their business name, but like a page title tag that they just stuck as a business name too. So it's like very obvious. I've had one person who's in financial consulting as an example who was impacted by the update. They did not have keywords in their business name. When we drilled down, though, what we found is that they had a lot of competitors using the same categories. So it was almost like an update from the filtering issue from before, where they had a lot of competitors in the same building as them using the same category. And that seemed to be they weren't being hit by that before, but all of a sudden, after the update, they were seeing issues from that again. And was able to help them get their rankings back, but it was from the same tactics that we were using before when we first saw that happen, that update with Google. And it was just like, hey, make sure that you differentiate your business from all these competitors as much as you can. In your Google business profile, fill everything out. Make sure that you have your suite number there. Make sure that your citations on all the major sites have your suite number there, all that kind of stuff. And that worked. That was literally all they did, and they got their rankings back. And it was strange to see that come back up as an issue. And I wonder if that's part of what's going on with some of these businesses that don't have the keyword stuffing going on in their name, is that they're being kind of hit by something that happened a while ago, like an update that we wouldn't even think about anymore for local, because if they were going to be hit by it, hurt by it, I would think that would have happened when that update initially rolled out, not now. And that helped. They went from ranking 20 to 9 for some of their keywords just by making sure they put their suite number back in the Google business profile. Like that's the only thing they did to differentiate them from the competitors who were at the same address. So yeah, I see a lot of industries that where the depending on the market, they've seen a change in from filtering, from being removed from the spam. And a lot of the times it doesn't hit the cities that you would think it would hit. And then other times it does. Like San Diego, I would expect them to see a difference there, but also not seeing the difference in Los Angeles at the same time is strange. I would think I would see that there. And I would think that if you're seeing this for your clients, your strategy should be based on what's happening in your specific market, not based on any blanket recommendation from anyone. But hey, if your market here, if you're in this market where people are getting away with all the spam still, rebranding might be a good choice for you. But if you're in a market where you are not seeing it anymore, like IT consulting for San Diego, that is not going to be a good way to go, because we're already seeing that Google's doing some correcting there. And it could be that maybe some of this is still being tested. Maybe this is something that's going to be rolled out in a bigger way later on this year. We may end up seeing 6 months from now that spam is kind of more taken care of. across all industries and markets for all we know. It could be that it's just we've caught the instances where it's happening, but it just hasn't completed. They haven't completed the test yet to determine if it's going to be like a local wide change.
Okay, so it's a little bit watch and see, which is probably not what people want to hear, but I guess it seems to be the kind of reality of it. I guess quickly, Joy, have you adapted anything in terms of what you do day to day, week to week, tactic strategy wise with your clients since this update?
I'm trying to think. Probably not. No, I don't think that there's any strategies really. Like maybe looking at additional listings might be one thing to consider, or like running ads in areas that you used to rank in. But no, I think like traditional SEO tactics work the same. Keywords in the business name definitely still work. I wasn't trying to allude that that's not like a ranking factor. It's just the strength of which it's a ranking factor. Whenever Google dials up something, which they dialed up proximity, something else gets dialed down as a result. So that's what connection I was able to see across like the businesses I looked at were ones that I've been following for years. So I was kind of like, okay, if I'm going to analyze things, I want to look at lots of different businesses, different industries, but ones I'm familiar with, so I can like better conclude who's winning. So like, coming up with conclusions is difficult. So trying to kind of look at that, but definitely keywords in the business name still works. But I would say like priority wise, it took a little bit of a decrease because it's not as impactful as it was before, but still does have an impact.
Okay, thanks. I'm just conscious of the time. I wanted to kind of get to the kind of Q&A. So I'm going to come to look at the next kind of question, which is, I guess, what are the main drivers of success in local search in 2020? Obviously, we've talked about things that changed last year, things that were different from sort of previous years that you kind of noticed. So Amanda, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think, if you did just three things into the local search work that you do for a client, what would those three things be? And I guess a little kind of caveat to that, how might that change, let's say, if it was a new business versus a really established business?
I'm going to steal from Ben a little bit. Being able to pivot. I think that's going to be the biggest thing for SEOs in general this year, is just being able to pivot based on what we're seeing, based on updates, based on just changes in user behavior. So like just being able to pivot and figure out, hey, this isn't working anymore. What do we need to do instead? I think another big thing is going to continue to be reviews. I think everyone is well aware of how important they are now, but I think that makes it just even harder for us to get enough reviews for our clients in comparison to our competitors. So I think that, and the fact that they're just showing up in more places and in different ways as well. I think that's going to continue to be a extremely important thing, especially when you have clients who struggle with getting reviews or in industries where it's not something that they feel comfortable asking for. For example, rehab clinics, right? They still need reviews, but they don't feel comfortable asking their clientele for reviews a lot of the times, even if they see competitors having them. Third thing, I would say, I would go back to thinking outside of the bun. So just being able to be creative with your problem solving. I like to not put too much weight on anything and rely on the data. Just because I've done it before and it worked doesn't mean it's going to work again. So just being able to rely on what's actually working, what you're actually seeing for that client. Not relying too heavily on what you're seeing in other industries or other markets, and just really paying attention to what that client's market is like currently, and getting testing the waters on different things to figure out what is actually going to work and what will not work.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amanda. That's excellent. Ben, same question actually. The three things that you would put all your money on if you had to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to some core tenets. So you're getting links and on-site are extremely important, right? That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed actually in over 20 years, I think, at this point. So that's still important, and we focus on it, especially when we're doing audits for our clients. The next thing is that local service ads, if it's available for you, do it. Take advantage of it. Try it. You might find it's for you. You might find it's not for you. But if you don't try it, then you're losing basically, and your competitors are winning, and that's all there is to it. So just dip your toes in, check it out. There's not that much to read out there about it. That's true, but experiment, try it. And the LSA team is really good at when it comes to support too, by the way. And the next thing is we've kind of discussed this already, and that's opening new locations. So, we do this for a lot of different franchises, and we have some franchises that were definitely hit by this vicinity update, but yeah, I mean, we happen to specialize in this whole rebranding and opening new locations aspect of things. So we think that's going to continue to accelerate in 2022.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Ben. And Joy, if you can answer that question as well.
Yeah, I would say long tail keywords are kind of where my obsession lies right now. So I think if you're, using a plumber as an example, if you're a plumber, and all you're trying to do is rank for plumber or plumber Denver, you're going to have a harder time competing for that thing. So if you can look for opportunities, for keywords that your competitors aren't necessarily targeting, this is where I really see strategies work well and quickly. So it's kind of like our focus. If we can figure out in different verticals what types of keywords really convert well, get a decent amount of traffic, but that not everybody knows about, that's really, I feel like, where the gold mine is. And how you rank for them, it's like traditional, like on-site SEO. Like there's no like secret stuff. It's a lot of like what Amanda was saying, like internal linking and, having good content, not repeating the same crap over and over, and having 15 blogs on the same topic and that type of thing. But I really think that going after trying to find a more diverse set of keywords instead of thinking like there's 5 keywords I need to track and that's it. And that's all I care about, which is a lot of small businesses. Get rid of that thinking and you'll be better off.
Okay. Is that still one? Or have we got two more things you focus on?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it's all encompassing, I guess, right? So like optimizing your site, like all the reviews, links, all that's like, I don't think there's really a lot of like new tactics per se when it comes to SEO. It's just what you're targeting, where you're targeting, that changes for sure. But
okay, great. And very quickly, what is the one thing you'll be doing less of this year, Joy?
Probably, like I alluded to, less spam likely. Would probably have to be the number one.
You mean less spam fighting?
Yes, right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, not creating spam. Yeah. And less of listening to what Google says too. I'll throw that in there because I feel like that's in our industry. SEO is obsessed about what Google says, and they're like, let me just tell you guys, like whether it's organic search, Google My Business, I'm going to keep calling it that. Google says a lot of things they don't enforce. They say a lot of things to do a lot of things that would actually harm you if you did them. So Google is not out for your better interest. Just keep that, like put that on a Post-it note and stick it on your computer every day and keep that at the front of your mind.
I will say something about that really quickly. Joy is 1000% correct. In the 2000s, I used to hang out with Mr. Matt Cutts all the time at PubCon. And one time he told me, he said 60% of what comes out of Google's mouth is actually misinformation.
I'll quote you on that. Excellent. Looking forward to the lawsuit. But essentially, it's a case of there is some good stuff that comes out, but don't obsess over it. It's pretty clear what the main tactics are. They haven't changed a huge amount. There's things around the fringe that have become beneficial. And if you focus on that and don't get distracted by all the kind of noise that can be created, things coming out of Google, and don't be too obsessed about it. Just get a really kind of locked in, mature, effective strategy and execute against that. That should, in all cases, deliver results. And when it's not, as Amanda, you said, be adaptable, be creative, pivot. And I'm trying to understand what's happening in a specific locality, metro, industry. If the usual things aren't working, then there's something unusual happening there, and be attentive to that. Amanda, what's the one thing you'll be doing less of?
I would say probably less spam too. I wanted to say something more creative. I didn't want to just parrot, but that's really what it is, less spam fighting. Less spam fighting and more creative problem solving. I think that's the direction to go in until Google has a more permanent solution for the amount of spam that we see in Google business profiles. I think time is probably better spent finding creative new ways to get your clients to rank for things that they can rank for, like targeting long tail keywords and things like that.
And that certainly sounds like a great way to make your job more interesting, right? I mean, spam fighting is frustrating and infuriating and quite repetitive and not massively rewarding, but being creative and solving problems for customers and delivering real results. I mean, that's what we'll be spending all our time doing, isn't it, really? Three of you, thank you very much. Let's jump into the Q&A now. Thank you everyone for hanging on. We've got 51 questions. We're not going to get through all of them. We're going to pick one up. So if you haven't upvoted a question yet, then please get to it. So haven't seen any of these. I'm just going to throw them at sort of people. So Ben, I'm going to come to you first. Is there any value in GMB posts? Is it still viewed by Google as an engagement metric?
So GMB posts are going to be extremely important from a conversion perspective more than anything else. Okay, so at one time there was a little bit of semantic relevance between the keywords that you're going to put into your posts and possibly a ranking a benefit, but that's not really true anymore. But posts are kind of nice in the fact that they show up all over the place. Now we've got product posts. You can actually pin one of those, quote unquote, pin one to the top of your knowledge panel. You've got posts that will show as related posts in mobile, and they show above your competitors. They show up as justifications on your profile. So yeah, and then of course to come back to your question, which is, are they an engagement metric? We don't know this, right? There's over 280 signals in organic. The click, which they're tracking, the view port, which they're tracking, may be an engagement metric, but we just don't know that for a fact. So I would say, are they useful in doing? Absolutely. If it's for that engagement metric, great, no problem. If it's for conversions, no problem. If it's for visibility, no problem. It touches kind of all three of those things.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to Joy, and actually this is kind of like a sister question to that one. How important is a Q&A in a good GBP strategy in 2022?
Really varies based on the business. So most of the time I say it's like not a high priority. We actually rarely do anything when it comes to Q&A for clients because most of them don't get questions. Like a lot of them don't get questions, but there are some verticals that get a lot of them. So if you are in a resort or I'm trying to think like anything retail, like I've seen a lot of Q&A come in there and questions go unanswered, or you have negative questions that are actually like reviews that you can get rid of if you just knew they were there. So I would say for certain brands, it's really important, but for the majority of home services and things like that, I would say very unimportant.
Do you ever do things like seed questions in there so that if you know what FAQs are for the business, do you ever use that as a seeding ground for those questions and answers?
We do, but I can't tell you that it's actually impactful because we put it there as this is a pretty thing. This is a thing that yes, it makes it look good. Couldn't tell you if it's going to do anything for your business. So it looks good. That's about it.
Okay, fair enough. And I forgot to say, the first question came from Natcham, so thanks, Natcham, and that was Rachel's question. Question now coming from Eddie. Amanda, if you could take this. It's probably quite a big question, actually. So we can distill it down so we get a good sort of punchy answer. What's the 80-20 of local search? If you want to do 20% of the things to get 80% of the benefit, where do you start?
Questionable tactics or all of the tactics that you only like the good ones? Because if you're talking about 20%, you want keywords in your business name and your Google business profile. That is if you're trying to put in the least amount of effort, that's where you're going to start. Actually having a website, having content on your website about your services in the city that you want to focus on, and building links to that website. I focus a lot on not just the Google business profile section, but the website part of it too, because I think that's a place where there's a lot of missed opportunities and can impact, of course, your ability to rank in Google Maps as well. So category, business name with a keyword in it, if you're just going straight for visibility and do not care about anything else. So having the right category, having a business name, proximity is always going to be a big thing. You don't really have much control over that. It's where you're located. So if you do have control over it, you want to be in a downtown area or the city center. That would be ideal. Or and that's one of the things I actually did with lawyers a lot of the time. They would ask, where should I get another location? And there's so much good data that you can provide on this is where you should have your next location based on the number of, if you're an injury lawyer, most accidents happen near someone's house, or car accidents happen near their home or their place of work. So you want to be somewhere near one of those spots. So there's like lots of different statistics and data points you can use to determine where a location would be best fitted. But if you're just going for the highlights, I would say category, keyword and business name, proximity to where people are, and then having your actual website set up and with content on it. If you want to get if you have 25%, get some actual reviews. That will also help as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, man. That was a really thorough answer. Joy, question for you that's coming from Melissa. What's the best way for a small business in a very small town, under 7,000 population, to utilize SEO and Google rankings to reach clients in wider surrounding towns?
Without knowing the vertical, my default answer would probably be service area pages. So service area pages can actually work really well in small towns because likely there's not a ton of competition. So usually that is one way that you can kind of gain ranking faster, depending on the vertical.
Okay, fantastic. Follow-on question from Brian, actually about service area pages. So Joy, I'll come back to you. How do I use my clients' geo-targeted service area pages and optimize that for near me searches?
Yeah, so like near me optimization is pretty simple. Like you put things like near you, nearby, near the area, around me, those types of wording on your page. And shockingly, they actually do have an impact in organic rankings. So they don't really impact local pack rankings at all, but we've seen lots of lift from adding those types of variations on the organic side. And Google kind of already geo targets these keywords. So like if you type in plumber, it'll actually show you plumbers that are in your town. If you type in plumber near me, same thing. It'll actually pull in like service area pages from that town or from the particular neighborhood that you're in. So they're pretty good at localizing those. So you should find that your Chicago page would rank for people searching for like plumber near me in Chicago. And then if you have like a suburb of Chicago, like Rockford, then like same deal, that should rank when people are searching that in Rockford.
Mm-hmm.
So when is that actually, I can't believe that works. I can't believe that putting near me and near
Me too.
you actually makes a difference.
Yeah, we published it on our blog. So I included screenshots like before and afters and stuff. Like I didn't expect it to work either. I can't tell you how many times we test things where I expect something to work and it doesn't, or vice versa. Like was looking at one this morning where I was like, oh my God, that works. Like, how is this like possible? Like, so that was one of those cases, right? Where it was just like, you got to test things. You got to always be open to the idea that you're wrong.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess
it's a great. That's quotable right there, by the way.
I'm wrong a lot. Put that out there. My hypothesis, like I can show you like case after case where I'm like, I think Google's going to do this, and I'm like, oh.
Amazing. I guess you just got to keep testing and trying stuff in different sort of scenarios and sort of see what works. And I just can't believe that works. But anyway, it's good to know that it does, and maybe it doesn't in some circumstances, but give it a try and sort of see what happens. Ben, a question for you. Do you have any suggestions for businesses who are SAB businesses only on Google Business Profile and are unwilling or unable to rent an office space?
All right, good question. So as far as that goes, I mean, basically, you have to have an address that you control. That's what it comes down to. So really, that requires you having a lease somewhere. It's possible that if, let's say, you've got a plumber business and you've got a storefront and you want to open up an SAB, you could do it at the owner's home. Because again, you have authority and you have control over that location, but you can't use PO boxes. You can't use virtual offices or anything like that. Actually, yes, you can. No, I'm kidding. You can't. Or you shouldn't. No, seriously, you shouldn't. So, I mean, Google's no, you can't. There's some like old places that still have them, but yeah, new ones usually get shut down immediately. And Google did that last year, actually. It was a great thing. So, with Regis's, now they auto detect Regis addresses and they auto suspend listing. It's fantastic. This will happen with my prediction. It's going to happen with UPS stores, FedEx's, PO boxes everywhere, hopefully one day. No, but seriously, yeah, I mean, that really is one of your only options is you could do it at your home. I do see a lot of companies that will put them out at their technicians' homes and things like that. Just realize that is a short-term strategy. People move, people quit, and you all of a sudden will no longer have authority over that location because of the verification address. You won't be able to prove it if ever it gets suspended. You're going to have to move it. So that's the short answer.
Okay, that's a great answer and a fantastic question, Nicole. Thank you. I'm going to come with a question from Janelle here. They're going to come to you, Amanda, as this is linked into some technical SEO. Hang on, it's just jumped around on my page. Hang on. Oh, no, it's just jumped around my page. Sorry. As people upvote things move around. So it's kind of jumped out of my eye line. Amanda, is schema still as important as it ever was for local SEO? And where does that rank in your importance of technical SEO tasks that you would focus on?
Yeah, I would say it's important, especially if your competitors aren't doing it, because then you have all of these features that make your listing stand out in search results that they do not have. So like the rating schema, having the image for your business, depending on what industry it is, whether that's going to be valuable or not. Things like that are having the breadcrumb schema. I would go for the schema features as much as you can, especially for service and location pages. So I think it's definitely still worth doing. It's gotten much easier to do. There's lots of tools, especially if a WordPress site that will essentially just do it for you. So I would recommend for sure going after schema. Especially if your competitors are not using it, because it just makes you stand out a ton. If they don't have their rating and your rating is very obviously right there, they don't have their price range in their search results, and you have your price range right there before somebody even clicks. It just makes you more easily accessible and more attractive.
So conversion factor more than a ranking factor.
Yeah. It's not going to impact your rankings, but it can impact your ability to get people to click through from search results.
Okay, great. Fantastic. There is, I'm going to jump around to the questions because the next question is particularly enormous, so we might kind of come back to it. So you're going to go to a question from Tori, which is, I'm going to put to you, Joy. It's about clinical practices, doctors. If there are multiple doctors in a doctor's practice in a clinic, should they each have their own listing or just one listing for the practice?
Ooh, that's a little question. So I would say it depends. Like, so we have a dentist client, for example, that's got lots of different listings, like lots of different offers to juggle, and it becomes a headache if people leave. So if you think that practitioner is going to be with you long term, then likely it's good to have a listing for them, because people searching for them by name, that kind of thing, will find it. If you're not sure, like it's a new employee or somebody that hasn't worked there very long, I'd probably say hold off. And I would also base it on if that practitioner has a different category they can use. So for example, using dentists, like, if the dentist office primarily uses the category dentist, then you could have like a practitioner use emergency dental or the one for dental implants, for example, like targeting something different. Having too many listings is usually a bad thing, more often than not.
So if you can have a separate category, that's a good thing. Does that mean you broaden your ability to rank for different keywords and queries?
Yes. So like what we saw with lawyers, for example, like personal injury lawyers, usually having a bunch of listings for lawyers is a nightmare, because they end up filtering the main listing. There's no additional benefit. There's no additional categories or anything. It's the two are just conflicting and competing. And then if you've got one with like 200 reviews and one with 3, Google sometimes shows the one with 3 and you're like, damn it, I don't want them to show that one. So often it's more of a headache and it doesn't actually accomplish anything.
What happens in the scenario? I think it's probably works maybe more for medical practitioners, where they might work out of 2 or 3 clinics, 1 or 2 or 3 days a week. What happens in that scenario?
They're allowed to have additional listings. Whether it's a good idea, I would argue probably no, because again, more headache, more to manage, more to look after. And if there's already a listing that ranks in that area, you're not probably getting any additional benefit. So that's where like you cannibalize your own efforts a lot of times by creating tons of listings. So it depends on a variety of factors, but if they were hypothetically Like if you got a doctor and they work in 3 different areas and you're not ranking in any of those areas right now for those particular terms that match your category, then maybe yes, it's a good idea. But I'd say most scenarios, no.
Interesting. I have a friend who's an acupuncturist who works in 3 separate towns on Monday, Thursday, Friday. So I guess they might be able to benefit from that. Okay, thank you, Joy. I've got a question for Ben, actually. Is there a process to getting new categories added to Google Business? Someone's put parenting coach down. I could really do with one of those. I could really do with a parenting coach.
There's a short and skinny answer to this, and that is not really. It doesn't even depend, actually, at this point. Google does things based on data. They do based on trends. And so for the most part, the process, if you want to suggest a category, is to go to the Google My Business Google Business Profile community, open up a thread, and state your case. Do it with data, and then get hundreds upon hundreds of people in your industry to come in on that thread and agree.
Ooh,
then you
nice.
might get an audience, because one of us product experts will see the thread, and if we can see that the data is compelling enough, we can escalate that to Google and ask them. No, it's not going to happen usually, because adding a category is like an act of Congress. So actually, Joy, I don't think I've ever seen them add a category that way. Have you?
Yep.
Once?
Yeah, there've been a couple, but it was one took 8 months, but there was a dental implant one that they did, and then there was one other one. I think it was like a CPA or a financial one, where I've seen like requests we sent through actually do get added, but like 8 or 9 months later. It's not fast.
It's super duper rare. I mean, there was one that I saw that we escalated. I can't say the exact category, but it looked like it was like, oh yeah, no, this is right. They should totally add a category for this. Big business too category, and they didn't add it, you know.
Oh,
so, but like Joy's saying, I mean, it does happen. So, you know, if you got enough people behind you.
Okay, so a bit of crowdstorming to get it done. Good tip, although results may not pay off, but probably not much of a high intensity sort of demanding activity to do, so maybe worth it. Amanda, another question from Janelle. Thanks for your questions, Janelle. You've asked some cracking questions today. What is the most effective strategy to get multi-location businesses ranked locally for each location? We could probably have an entire webinar just on this topic.
We could.
Maybe get it down.
This is something near and dear. I spent a lot of time on this. I worked with some franchises where they had over 200 locations, and Google Business Profiles for each location. And the goals there are to, one, make sure you have access to all the locations. I think that's going to be the hardest part of it, and the most, and that gives you the ability to get some consistency on business categories, get some consistency on the content that's just in the Google Business Profiles in general, getting good photos there and stuff as well. But for franchises and multi-location businesses, the biggest impact I've seen is by improving the content on your website as well. That landing page you have for each location is going to be crucial. And the more duplicative your content is, the harder it's going to be to compete with the mom and pop place that has a website that is only about that one city that they're trying to rank for, where your website is trying to rank for a ton of different cities. So making sure that the content on your site is good, relevant, unique, includes like your top services in detail, links out to other pages on your website to talk some more about those top products and services, that you build internal linking to those location landing pages, that you work on your domain authority. Those are all things that are going to impact it, because you are kind of fighting an uphill battle in some ways when you're working with a multi-location business, because sometimes, especially when it's a franchise owners do not like moving locations, and they do not like getting a location in the actual city where rent is more expensive. So like if you have someone who wants to rank in Atlanta, they're not going to buy an office in Atlanta. They're going to buy an office in an area outside of Atlanta and tell you that they still want to rank there. So it's kind of up to you to make sure that your website does enough to support what they want to do. And focus on those nearby cities too. So like not just Atlanta, but all of those smaller cities that have the population to support the justification to try to rank there, having content to support the ranking in those cities as well, because you have a better chance of popping up in those cities and ranking in those cities than you do in Atlanta when you're not physically in Atlanta. If you can get some branding done where you can include the city in your business name, that would also be very helpful. If you have like 200 locations and you want to rank in 200 different cities, having your name of your business Atlanta will help you rank in Atlanta significantly better than just depending on the Google business profile on its own. So I would work on branding so that you can have each location have their city name as part of the business name on their signage, on everything legally. Like that's their business name. Do it the right way, because it's not going to be worth the risk when you do it if you do it the wrong way. And then making sure your website supports everything that you're doing there by having good quality content as well.
Fascinating. Thank you, Amanda. You've managed to very succinctly and excellently sort of sum up what is an incredibly broad and complex set of question and an issue. And I think we will definitely do a webinar on that topic coming up sort of very soon. So question for you, Ben. Why does Google keep adding and removing services to my business profile? And is there any way, and I have to remove the ones that are irrelevant, is there any way for me to manage this in a better way?
Okay. Surface area businesses are definitely the redheaded stepchild of Google business profiles. And so they like to kind of kickstart things ahead of time whenever they're going to use a piece of information. Example is when they went ahead and they got rid of Radius. And I think that was 2 years ago. They got rid of Radius and supplanted it with a bunch of zip codes and areas that they thought you were in. And then they restricted it to 20 after that. But this is way of Google's business profile's way of saying, hey, we need this data. And if you're not going to supply it to us, we're going to supply it for you. And so the interesting thing is so they did push a bunch of new kind of services into the categories, right? Categories, yeah. But the thing is you can remove them. And you can get rid of them. So once you save them, they should actually go away. If they don't, then you need to look to mainly your website. So like if you try to change them and they come back with an orange strike, for instance, you can if they're solid orange, then take a look at your website and make sure that there's no content that is relevant to those pieces that you don't want, because Google can draw a semantic correlation between the words that you're using on your website and the services that they're going to input automatically into your Google business profile. But again, if you remove them, they should go away. If they don't, definitely come to the community and open up a thread.
Okay, great. Thank you. Question for you, Joy. This is a long one. This is from Zach Flanagan. After the vicinity update, we opened a new branch or a new location that was 2 hours away, different staff, different physical location. We've been suspended after verifying the postcard in that location. Does it seem that additional brand locations are not being approved after vicinity?
No, but there's like a million reasons why your listing could be suspended. So it's really hard to tell you why it got suspended. So I don't know. If you haven't, you could hire Ben, or you could go to the Google business profile community and somebody can give you some insight there. But if you haven't tried already, always, file a reinstatement form so you can get it reinstated. But no, like that definitely wouldn't be connected to the vicinity update.
Okay. Or talk to Ben. But there's another one that might be, right in your wheelhouse. A person is leaving 1-star reviews on multiple GMB profiles for a franchise. How can I report this when it's across multiple locations?
Oh, is that question for me?
Yes, it is for you. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Okay,
Yeah.
so so franchise getting multiple 1-star reviews across multiple locations. So the question is going to come down to is it the same profile leaving a 1-star review? If it is the same profile, then you actually have a really, really good chance of getting it removed. Whether you're a franchise or not, actually, by the way, doesn't matter. So if there's a pattern that can be kind of divined from the reviews, then you have a much better chance. What I recommend doing is that you go ahead and you set up a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, actually preferably a Google Sheet, with your locations, and then start cataloging each one of the reviewers. When you're doing that, you want to go ahead and catalog all of the reviews that they are leaving as well. So that way you can kind of get a nice little matrix going. And you can see that, Miles Anderson has left, 1-star reviews for Amanda's businesses, Ben's business, and Joy's business. That's a pure indicator that it is somebody who is going after basically the franchise, and it can be looked at as an attack. It's not always going to work. This is not a bulletproof plan, by the way. This is just a plan. Okay. So you start by reporting the reviews from inside of your Google Business Profile dashboard, report the reviews. Wait till you get a response, make your sheet. And then what you can do is you can reach out to support if you want to with the sheet. It's kind of useless. They're not very good at it. So the best bet is going to be to come to the community with your documentation, and then somebody, a product expert, myself, Joy, etc., will go ahead and we'll escalate that to Google and ask them to look at it. At that point, they will make a decision based on their internal metrics, which you may or may not agree with. And basically, that's going to be it. That's your chance.
Okay. Fantastic. That's great. We have hit the 90-minute mark, so it is time to wrap things up. I would like to say a huge thanks to the three of you. You have imparted incredible wisdom with a lot of humor, a lot of detail and insight. It's been a total pleasure. That the time has absolutely flown past. We actually have 51 questions. I'm sorry we didn't get anywhere near answering all of them. Some absolutely cracking questions in there that I can really hear from the tone that some people are really struggling with, really want to get answered. So what I will do for everyone kind of listening in is we'll take and download those 51 questions, and we'll see how quickly we're able to get answers and produce those and add those to the kind of write-up for this. I can't promise anything because I can promise things. My content team will absolutely crucify me tomorrow. But there are such great questions in there, and I can really sort of feel people's pain and desire to kind of get to the bottom of those and sort of provide answers to them. So we'll do our best to get hold of those questions and provide some answers on the kind of BrightLocal blog. And if your name's next to it, we'll give our best to kind of notify you. But look out for that blog. It'll have the sort of full roundup. It'll have the recording and hopefully have some of those kind of questions answered. This has been a total pleasure. I'm so delighted to be back doing kind of webinars again. And it's because I get to spend time with people like you who are incredibly insightful, incredibly generous, and just actually really lovely people. And I've spent all day on my own in my office at home, and this has been by far the most enjoyable and engaging part of it. I've really had such a good time. I do hope you'll kind of come back and join us on some future webinars. We do plan to ramp up our webinar activity this year, sort of starting from now. So I'd love to have you back on. But thank you again for your time and your wisdom that you shared with us. Brilliant. And to everyone who has hung around and stayed on, thank you very much. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you will come back and listen in on future webinars as well. I'm now going to hit the end broadcast button, which, if I remember correctly, just stops everything in its tracks. So we'll go from there. Have a wonderful day, evening, wherever you're listening in from. All the best. Thank you very much.